The Empty Man was written and directed by David Pryor and stars James Badge Dale. And this film focuses on a private investigator investigating the case of missing teens, dead teens, and they're all left with a message called "The Empty Man Made Me Do It." And what the Empty Man is it's an entity that you summon by blowing into a bottle on a bridge. And then day one you hear him, day two you see him, day three he gets you. And so he's trying to figure out what exactly the Empty Man is, why all these kids are dying, how a creepy cult is involved with it all. And good lord, I really like this movie, and I'm gonna get into why in a second. From the trailer that they released like 2 weeks ago as of filming this, I was really expecting this to be like, another Ouija, another Bye Bye Man, another Truth or Dare, where it's just stupid teens summoning some kind of spirit. They're all being haunted by it. They all die in the end or something. I don't know. None of those films ever interested me, and they were all terrible from what I've heard in the reviews. And so when I saw the trailer, I was like, this looks like you're leaning towards it, but it looks like it could be something. And, the reason why this is so good is it because it is not framed in that stupid teens summon demon way. That's an aspect of it, but that is not the focus. This film is a mystery from beginning to end, and I love that about it. Oh, that made me so happy. This is actually based on a comic of the same name. I've never read the comic. I have no idea what it's like. If you have read it, let me know what it's like, because I'm now very interested in reading it after I saw this, because this film was so interesting. You really don't see mainstream horror movies like this like most of the time anymore, because a lot of this is a lot more psychological, slow burn building mystery kind of film rather than jump scare fest horror film. There's definitely horror aspects in here, most definitely, but I would not stand by and say that it is a pure horror movie from beginning to end. A lot of it is psychological, and a lot of it is a slow burn, and I can definitely tell you that if you are expecting this to be a normal kind of horror film, or just a horror film in general with a lot of spooks, you are going to be disappointed. But if you go in it with a knowledge of knowing that it is a mystery with a lot of dark and mysterious and horrific elements added to it, with a really good mystery at the center, I think you're going to enjoy this a lot more, because I went in completely blind, knowing absolutely nothing, and I found it to be fantastic. My biggest problem with these kinds of teen summoning demon kind of films is just it's so cliched, so played out. You know exactly what's going to happen, when they do it. All the characters are terrible. They're either just all tropes or they're just written so poorly. And even when the scares happen, they're not even scary. They're just jump scares. And because the characters are such one-note blank slates, I don't give a shit when they die. Here, though, because it's framed from the private investigator's perspective rather than the teenager's perspective, you're already drawn in a lot more, because you're like, what's happening here? What's the Empty Man? What's all this kind of stuff? And you really, actually get invested in what's happening, because you yourself don't entirely know what's going on. You're with the private investigator from beginning to end because you're with him. You know about as much as he does. Although there is the beginning, which I absolutely love the beginning. I'll get into that in a minute, which gives you some information. But other than that, you still don't really know what's going on. You don't know what this cult is. You don't know how it involves, all these teens dying, all this kind of stuff. It's a really, really well thought out mystery. And the last, 15, 20 minutes or something like that, it's gonna mess with your brain, and I can definitely say it's gonna piss off a lot of people, but I really liked it. So the beginning of this film was not what I would expect at all. Typically, I'm not going to say what the beginning of the film is for once you see it, but it would be that very typical, kind of brief origins of whatever the thing is you'd see for a minute or two. Oh, no. This goes on for about 10, 15 minutes, maybe even a bit longer than that. It's kind of like a short film all of its own, but it's still contained within the movie. And so as it kept going, I was like, oh, we're actually going to get to see a lot of this. And we actually kind of learn what the Empty Man is. Not really, but kind of how this all started, why it happens, how it works in a sense. It's a really smart and a really good way to get the audience already knowledgeable about the entity itself. So we have that bit of knowledge a bit more than our main character that we'll be following. So we kind of can be a step ahead of him in a sense. Most horror films, or most films in general, would only have this be a minute or two, or could even just be exposition and wouldn't even be anything. But the fact that it's here and that it's so long, it's so interesting. I love that. You don't ever get to see that, but the director took the time to actually show these characters, show what the Empty Man is in a sense, and just get it all so that way we understand what it is without us being like, wait, how does that work? Why is it doing that? In that kind of sense. I love it. When it goes into those actual horror elements, they're done pretty well. The atmosphere is very claustrophobic in a lot of scenes. You don't know exactly where things are. Lights are blaring all around. It's definitely meant more to confuse you, like the main character is, rather than to be like, flashing lights, spooky. It's really for that claustrophobic feeling that the main character is feeling. You don't know what's going on. You don't know exactly where you are, and because of that, it adds an atmosphere of intensity that otherwise wouldn't be there if it wasn't filmed the way that it was. So I definitely give props to that. And the actual spooks that happen, they're definitely a bit more jump scares, but the way that the Empty Man looks, the way that he attacks and things like that, it's really intriguing and very creepy. I wouldn't say that it's Babadook levels of creepy, but it's pretty effective. Now, at first when I was watching this, I would definitely say that the main character is kind of a bit of a blank slate in terms of who he is, what his kind of personality is, his life. But as the film goes on and you begin to learn more things, you begin to learn exactly why. And if you're like me, you find what they explain to be incredibly intriguing. It makes me want to go back and rewatch just to see exactly how the ending works into the film as a whole. There's going to be a lot of people that probably won't be happy with that and will be very confused by it. I can understand that. I would have been the exact same way 5 years ago. But honestly, with the ending and as the film as a whole, I found it to be incredibly interesting. It makes me want to go back and rewatch it. Overall, The Empty Man was a huge surprise to me. I was expecting it to be another, shitty Ouija, bye-bye man horror film. Just, give me no characters I cared about. It's just bad overall. But what I got was something that was incredibly intriguing from beginning to end, and being a mystery rather than a pure horror movie drew me in even more, got me even more interested in the characters, the world, and everything as a whole. It was done in such a smart and clever way, and I wish that it wasn't released in theaters at this time. I wish that they had just waited a bit longer so that audiences could actually get to see this, in full. But sadly, that's not going to happen, and it is in theaters right now, so if you do want to go see it, I would highly recommend you go see it. It's one of the biggest surprises of the year, and if you like a good mystery with some good spooks, this is definitely a film for you. I'm going to give The Empty Man an 8 out of 10. I was shocked by how much I liked this movie. Knowing nothing, I found it to work even better in my favor, and by the end, it made me want to watch it again, which not a lot of horror movies can do that often for me, so definitely props to this movie. So that was my review of The Empty Man. Have you seen it? What'd you think of it? What's your favorite horror movie? What are some spooky movies that you like to watch during the Halloween season? Let me know down in the comments below, and as always, make sure to like, share, subscribe, all that cool stuff, and I will see you all next time.